Well, Merry Christmas, Hockey Town. We hope all of you had a great holiday. Happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate as well. With that kicking off, just a great time of year. Some big news here the day after Christmas for the Detroit Red Wings. Derek Lalonde and Bob Bugner relieved of their duties as of this morning, replaced by Todd McLellan making his return to Detroit, bringing Trey Yanni with him. Forrest and I are going to break it down right now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Hockey Town Hangout.
Brings it in, scores! Oh, his first NHL goal is a beauty!
The sickest Detroit Red Wings podcast. It's gonna be sick.
So, Forrest, I get up this morning, have a nice slow morning, just recuperating from all the delicious holiday food I've eaten over the past 72 hours and getting ready to watch Axel Sandin Pellikka play in World Juniors, getting that set up on the TV and hop on Twitter. And I saw the tweet 1 minute after it dropped. Derek Lalonde out, Todd McLellan in. Forrest, what are your initial reactions?
It was time. Maybe at least a month too late. But this is a team that doesn't really fire their coach mid-season. So to see them kind of do something out of the ordinary, I'm encouraged by. This team was a ship without a captain, without a direction, and now we bring in someone with familiarity in the organization and a winning mentality. He won a Stanley Cup here in Detroit in 08. Bringing someone like that back, I think, can only help. Having two straight coaches with no NHL coaching experience, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again. So to hire a coach with lots of experience, I'm pretty sure he was the coach of all those great San Jose teams, ones that made the conference finals a couple times, almost made the cup. Excited to bring him back. Do I think this team is going to rattle off 8 in a row like Boston? Absolutely not. I don't think we have the team to do that, but it'd be nice if we got a little new coach bump. But at the end of the day, it's Christmas a day late. A lot of people have been clamoring for this. I know I've been on this for at least a month and a half. So excited to see some new faces in the building, and hopefully they can change things, because their change is definitely needed.
I think it's, watching those final few games before the break, the back-to-back with Montreal, obviously losing both of those. And then with how they looked on Monday, I know you talked about it earlier when I called you, like you were at the game. I watched it on TV start to finish, and they looked completely checked out. They looked like a group of guys who had their minds on everything but the hockey game they were playing. Excuse me. But it's just, I think when you saw that, I think a lot of people knew that it was probably time, because it's not like the Blues. It's not like it's the 2019 Blues in April we're playing, right? This is a 500-ish team that's had their own fair share of struggles. They obviously gassed their coach and brought in Monty, and they're finding their way too. But not being able to generate anything, your power play went over those 3 entire games, I'm pretty sure. Penalty kill continues to struggle, which is, I think, why Bob Bugner was also let go, because he was in charge of the penalty kill, which was quite frankly atrocious. And I think it was definitely time. I think that you're not going to please everybody with whatever coach you hire. Everyone's going to be able to find something wrong with it. But the thing that I keep coming back to is, McLellan, he got to start head coaching like right after the Cup team. I think the next year he was with San Jose, started as a head coach there, was there for 7 years and made the playoffs 6 times. I'm pretty sure at least 1 year, maybe a couple years, those Sharks teams eliminated Detroit. They always gave us fits with Jumbo Joe and Patrick Marleau and Nabokov and all the guys that they had back in those days. And then he goes to Edmonton, where Edmonton, I think when he got there, it was the year before McDavid, or maybe his rookie year, but obviously a nice toy in the chest for a coach to work with. But Edmonton had a culture of losing and losing and losing for a long time, and he was able to come in there and get the ship right and end an 11-year playoff drought that they had. And then with LA, went there after getting fired, was there for 4 or 5 years before he got fired from LA, made the playoffs a couple times. And that was a team, after they won their cups, they were rebuilding a little bit, and they brought in McLellan to try and become a playoff team and relevant again. And I think that was accomplished because they made the playoffs, and we still talk about LA, and they're still a pretty decent team. So this guy has a pedigree of being able to maybe change some identities, change some cultures, become a playoff relevant team. And I know all of us want to win Stanley Cups. There's no doubt about that. But you have to change the culture and you have to become playoff relevant before we can get to that point. So I think this hire helps in that regard. Like you alluded to, the first time we've hired an NHL coach with NHL head coach experience since Babcock in 2005, almost 20 years ago. And I'm willing to give the guy a shot. Like you said before, like there's no chance it can be worse. And you bring in a guy who has some familiarity to the organization, a guy who has a pedigree of winning, and a guy who actually is only 2 wins away from 600 in his NHL head coach career.
You made the point about how successful he was at his first 2 stops, San Jose and Edmonton, and well, actually 3, including the Kings. In all 3 stops, the team was not a playoff team. Teams, I shouldn't say didn't play hard, but they weren't living up to their potential is what we'll say. The Sharks, you mentioned, you go in, they rattle off like 6 playoffs, a bunch of division titles. Edmonton, yes, they had McDavid, but they also had just chaos from basically top down. And he centered them and started moving them in the right direction. They don't become today's Edmonton wagon without him as a transitory coach in there. And then in the Kings stop, they were not good up until he got there. And then he took them to 2 straight playoff appearances. Yeah, they didn't win a round or anything, but they also weren't expected to be in the playoffs either of those 2 years. So the common theme between all 3 of these stops is he raises the floor of these teams. He gets the most out of them. And really that's just what we need. There's a lot of these guys that are not going anywhere. I think there's only four guys that are either UFAs or RFAs after the year. So most of this team's going to be around for next year, which is why I think they had to pull the trigger on an NHL guy and see if they can move the pieces around and rearrange the deck chairs, basically.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of it all is, kind of they let it get, like, I don't want to say it's out of reach, because in the NHL, like, nothing's really out of reach until it's over type of thing. But they have a lot of teams that they would need to jump to get into a playoff spot for this year. So I'm almost wondering if it was done now to just start that culture change process to get a jump on it for next year. Because I really do, like, we all want the team to be good. We're tired of this rebuild BS. We're tired of, being in all-time bad playoff drought type of category. Like, it sucks. But I think probably the best play this year is to be bad and get a top 5 pick. I think that Dylan Larkin is going to turn 29 this summer. Not saying he's washed up by any means. It's not like 29 is old, but like, you're going to have to start planning for who's the next first line center when he starts to age out of that type of ceiling. And I think there's a couple of guys in this draft who would be able to really help you there. A guy I really like is Michael Misa in Saginaw. I think that might be the most realistic option, maybe in that kind of 3, 4, 5 area that you might be able to get a guy like him.
Just double checking, because you're assuming we don't get lottery luck if we do actually take.
Hell no.
Just double checking.
No. But if you can get, 3, 4, or 5 and, maybe jump up a few spots, I mean, that's obviously nice. But like I said, I think it's almost to get a jump on, resetting for next year. I think, let's establish the new culture. Because tweet we put out this morning with a couple of clips from McLellan post-game interviews with his time in Edmonton, not bashful whatsoever. He told it like it was, called particular guys out, called out the effort. And I think that's what this team's been missing is accountability. Like, that's like one thing you hear fans, us in particular, clamoring for all the time, is that how come none of these veteran leadership guys ever take a turn in the box where they played 10 shit games in a row? And it's, I think just that type of reset in terms of like the fabric and foundation of the team is probably going to be a good thing. And I think getting a jump on that before training camp next year and giving yourself maybe an 8-9 month runway as opposed to 3 or 4, that was probably the thought process, I would guess. And I'm willing to give the guy a shot. I mean, if he can bring that level of accountability, maybe it doesn't equate to a playoff spot, but maybe it, translates to some better habits and some guys being held accountable. And maybe we still finish the year bad, but we can feel good about the direction we're going. We can feel good about adding another top 5 pick to the treasure chest. We can get excited about some of these prospects who are developing nicely. Sandine Pellica, 4-point day at World Juniors opening game today. So there's reasons to be excited, but this was a hire that you had to get right. I don't know if this is going to be the guy to bring us to Stanley Cups, but I'm pretty confident this can be a guy that can change the culture and bring us back to some type of playoff relevance.
And I think that's the bar for now, right? Is making the playoffs. Nobody's sitting here expecting a Stanley Cup. We just want to be relevant. We want to be in the thick of things. We want to be playing games that are worth something come down the stretch. Obviously, we're talking about the coach here, but 6th oldest roster in the NHL and the 6th worst points percentage in the NHL. So, there's a lot of guys that are on the older side here. Obviously, we know that Steve has preferred to dip into free agency and kind of patch some holes through shorter-term deals. There's not a lot coming off the books this year. I'm pretty sure like Husso and Petrie are 2 of the big contracts that are coming off. Can't remember the other couple off the top of my head, but next year, I believe, is when most of the bad money comes off. Gustafsson, Hull, Sherratt, or actually, I think Sherratt's this year. I take that back. But there's a lot more that comes off next year. So I'm glad that kind of transitioning back, I'm glad that they signed him for a multi-year, Todd McLellan, just because this is not, a 1-year turnaround thing. In my opinion, they should start the fire sale tomorrow and start trading away guys. In my opinion, there's no reason that Danielson shouldn't be up here, at least to get his 9 games. Same with Willander, same with Mazur when he comes back, same with Soderblom. At this point, what do you have to lose? Now, maybe you give him a couple weeks to, adapt to a new coach, the team that's up there. But if it continues to not work, you got to open up spots for the young guys. There's no reason we should have Johanssons that are 24 years old just getting their first taste of the NHL. How guys get better is they get that taste, they go back down, they work on their game, they blow it out of the water, and then they come back up. That's exactly what Casper did. Even though he only played like 3 or 4 games, he had a really good showing. He went back down to Grand Rapids and knocked the door down and basically forced the Wings' hand. But we have to give them the runway to do so. We can't go out and sign all these guys in free agency every single year. Even though they are for short-term contracts, they're still blocking people. So I'm interested to see what they do over the next couple months. If we continue to the only reason we're not last in the Eastern Conference is because Buffalo's on like a 12-game or was on a 12-game losing streak. That is the only reason we aren't in the cellar right now. So we'll see. I'm very interested to see the direction of this team because I personally think like they have 3 goalies. Trade one, get something back. Just continuing on this rebuild, like let's do something. We've talked about trades and being afraid to make trades. Let's not be afraid to make trades. Let's swing for the fences here for once instead of playing the safe route.
Yeah, I think like a subliminal type message that kind of gets sent with a move like this too is like everyone's leash gets a little bit shorter. You know what I mean? Like, so Yzerman's going on 19, 25. So he's like 6-7 years ish in that ballpark. And, third coach, second one he's hired. I think everyone's leash gets shorter in a sense, and including Yzerman's leash, because everything that you've done, at least on the pro side up till now, has not been up to standard. And you don't make a move like this gassing your head guy the day after Christmas unless you are sending some type of message. Now, I think the message, at least how I see it looking in from an outsider's perspective, is that everything that we've done so far isn't working And that's on me as the manager, that's on the coaching staff as the coaches, and that's on the players too. And I think that's why right now you bring in a head coach who has experience at the NHL level, like a lot of it, like 14 full seasons and 2 seasons cut short by being fired. So this guy's been a head coach for the better part of 2 decades in the National Hockey League. He's not afraid to hold guys accountable. He's not afraid to call guys out. And that's something that has really been missing in the Red Wings dressing room. I would argue probably Babcock was pretty good at that, but he also took it to the fucking extreme also. So, that's something that's been missing for a long time. And like, you could even go back to some of the Babcock days at the end when guys like Cleary and Helm kept getting into the lineup. And obviously with Blashill too, like some of those guys, some of those veteran guys who never came out of the lineup. Abdelkader comes to mind, and Jonathan Erickson. And so I'm really hoping that even though this is McLellan's second tenure in Detroit, obviously first as a head coach, like I'm really hoping all the experience that he's had so far working with some of these, elite Hall of Fame type players like Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty, like that's valuable experience dealing with really, really exceptional hockey players and big time, like probably pro sports egos too at the same time. And I'm really curious to see how these first couple months go, like between now and Four Nations. And I don't know if it translates to more points in the standings, but hopefully the games where you're getting your doors blown off because of shit effort, hopefully that comes to a complete end. And also too with Yzerman, like bringing in this guy now when he did, like you've got like a few years, maybe like a few years to 10 years, like a full decade's worth of like data and like evidence of what you're going to do. And this has to be progress. Like this has to be a stepping stone to turning the page in this era of the club's history, because between today and when Lidstrom retired, I guess, like it's been nothing but mediocre. And I think we're at best. Yes. And, this is a coach who took the San Jose Sharks to back-to-back conference finals, lost to the Blackhawks and lost to the Canucks in 10 and 11. Ended a playoff drought with an Edmonton team who had been between pretty much Gretzky and McDavid, like mostly irrelevant, like a few good seasons sprinkled in here and there. And then being able to take a team like LA, a non-traditional hockey market that had some success in the mid 2010s, and then they ended up back towards the bottom of the league, picking in the lottery, and they bring in that guy, and he again kind of flips the culture, changes their identity. And so this has to be something that works out. And I'm really hoping that that the management kind of take it to heart too, because the team that they put together this year is not it. And it's like you were a Simon Edvinsson injury away from being borderline unwatchable. And I don't know if it should be that bad. Like you should be able to have leadership on the team that demands a little bit more. Like you lose to the Blues, fine, but you can't lose to them 4-0 the last game before Christmas, looking like your mind's on a beach in Barbados somewhere. Like you got to be dialed into the end. And I think that starts at the top. And that definitely starts with the head guy on your bench.
Well, let's not forget that, you made the great point about Edvinsson and his importance to this team. He didn't make, he had to basically knock down the door at the beginning of the season. And we all knew that he was going to be one of our best defensemen. It's like, why is the average casual fan able to see this, but the Red Wings management not?
Right.
One more thing, kind of a final wrap up here on this McLellan situation. I've got an article from Newsweek here. It says, McLellan, known for his high tempo, strong puck possession play that commands game flow. Does any of that sound like the current Red Wings team? No, it doesn't, which is, I think, a beautiful thing to hear, because we do have a couple guys that can provide a lot of speed. We do have the potential on this team with a different system, because that's ultimately what coaching is. It is putting your players in a position to succeed. It's not trying to fit square pegs into round holes. It is putting your players in a position to succeed. And if you're not, like being the 6th, 4th team in points percentage, a change has to be made. And last thing I wanted to add was Red Wings are 30th overall in puck possession at 5-on-5 play. You can't win hockey games if you don't have the puck on your stick. I mean, I think I stopped counting in the game on Monday the number of times that they dumped the puck in and didn't chase after it. I think I stopped counting after like 15 times. This team just willingly gives the puck away to change because they're so tired from playing defense because they don't ever have the puck. So they finally get said puck and then they dump it in and give it away to the other team. It's just something had to give. And it's nice to hear. Well, I'm hoping that, that little excerpt there, it does prove true here in this team. Instead of dumping the puck in, let's throw it back to the defense and try and regroup and get some new bodies out there and attack as opposed to giving stuff away.
Yeah, the dump and chase hockey is super frustrating to watch. Like when you have a team that can forecheck really well and like will actually do it. Like I think forechecking may be like one of the least desirable things to do as a hockey player, but like because so many are like so bad at it so often, and like you do the little things hard, like forecheck hard and get down and block shot. Like you do that when you're motivated. Like that's just the bottom line. Like you're not going to do those little nitty gritty type of details that it takes to be a championship type team. Like you're just not going to do that for a guy on the bench that you don't respect. You're not going to do that for guys who have letters on their chests that are just absent for games at a time. Like seeing that A on JT Comfort the other night, like in what world does he deserve that A on his chest? Like if I was a guy on the team, like that would bother me. And so these are just like the human things. And like Tarasenko too. Where the hell is Tarasenko? Like what does he have? Like 4 goals? Like
he's also been playing on the first line a bit, dude, and he's still not doing anything.
I don't know what world Vladimir Tarasenko is a first liner in 2025, damn near, but just some of the decision making and the inability to figure out the penalty kill. I mean, it's December 26th. The season's been going on for 2.5 months. Like you can't figure out the penalty kill in that amount of time. So I'm really hoping this just leads to overall culture change. And I think that it will. It might take a little bit. Like you might have to see some of these guys get shipped out of town because, quite frankly, I think there are some guys on the roster that wearing the winged wheel on their chest doesn't mean a damn thing to them, and that's pretty fucking sad. And I really hope to see that change. And McLellan was there with Babcock and was there. I think McLellan even coached Yzerman too. I think Yzerman's last year was McLellan's first year as an assistant coach. Someone can fact check me on that. But
no, I think you're right.
But he's been around and he's seen it. And that was really kind of the last chapter of the Wings' most recent, greatness was kind of that period between the Cup and when Lidstrom retired, and he was there. So I'm really hopeful and really optimistic right now. I don't think this guy is the savior. I'm not sure he'll be the coach of our team if we ever get back to the Cup final and win a cup. But I think this is a really good fit for somebody who can change culture and can hold guys accountable. And it's going to take some collaboration. Like the management and the pro scouting and those guys have to hold up their end of the bargain. And whatever they assemble between now and opening night next year, like needs to be a lot better. Like if this guy can come in here and change your culture and make you more competitive, and maybe you don't improve that much in the standings, but you're not losing by 3, 4, 5 plus goals a few times a week. You know what I mean? So there's definitely positives. There's reasons to be optimistic. I mean, you have some good pieces still at the NHL level, like Raymond Seider, Edvinsson. I still like Larkin and DeBrincat. You got ASP who tore it up today. You got Trey Augustine, Sebastian Kosa, Dmitry Buchelnikov. Looks like he might be a really, really good player who hopefully he can get over to the North American side of things here in the next year or two. So like there's some help coming. But the pro scouts and the people who are putting the year in, year out roster together, they got to be more dialed in, or we got to bring in people to help with that, because that's been missing for far too long too. So it was nice to see them address something in like the lack of accountability thing today, but there's still more to address. And I'm hopeful to see that happen over the next several months.
I think outside of signing like a potential top 4 defenseman, there's no reason they should sign anybody in free agency. I mean, most of our really good prospects, I will say, outside of ASP, obviously, are on the forward side. I think addition by subtraction up front is the best way, which is why I think that any opportunity they have to ship someone out, they absolutely should. and like I mentioned, top 4 defenseman. I think that's the only thing you splash for. Goaltending, like you mentioned, Augustine has been lighting it up in the NCAA. There is nothing for him to prove there anymore. That man better be in Grand Rapids. And I don't know if we have the space for Kosa next season, but I think the following season we should definitely have Kosa at least, if not Kosa and Augustine up there. I probably wouldn't bring them up at the same time, but having one of those youngsters up there instead of paying these goalies. I mean, let's just call it what it is. We have 3 goalies, I think, taking up like $10 to $12 million in the cap, and that's a lot. Like, this team is strapped up against the cap, and they're the 6th worst team in the NHL and the 6th oldest. So very, very intrigued to see the way this goes, but I think you got to open spots up for young kids and just see what they have, man. I don't see any reason why Casper shouldn't be centering the second line and them at least seeing what he's got.
Yeah, I think if we learned one thing today, it's that it's time for change in Detroit, and it's time for change moving forward. Obviously, what we have been doing up to this point has not been working. So it's good to see them do something, bring in a guy who's, turned some clubs around before. And hopefully this lights a fire under some guys in the locker room too. Because I think they're in for a rude awakening. Between the difference between a Derek Lalonde and a Todd McLellan practice has got to be just insane. I would imagine it's like night and day, I would guess. But Forrest, any final thoughts on the state of the team moving forward?
I think as Red Wings fans, we should be more excited than we were yesterday. At least we can start to chart a different course, take a new direction, start trying something different. But yeah, the next month and a half, next 2 months are going to be absolutely crucial as this team navigates before the deadline, because I think this deadline could be key. If they can, it doesn't even matter what they get back. As long as they offload people, I think Husso should be traded. Definitely Petrie should be shipped to Siberia. Like, if somebody wants to take Vladimir Tarasenko for a late round pick, I'm happily parting ways with him. I don't know that anybody would, but anyone that even has the slightest bit of interest, I think, should be moved out of town. And let's see what the youngsters got, man.
Well, Hockey Town, we hope you continue to enjoy your holiday season. Hopefully you're off work this week. Have a safe and happy New Year. Red Wings picking it up on Saturday.
I believe that's tonight. I believe that they play. No, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow against the Leafs.
All right, so we'll see Coach McLellan make his debut, only 2 wins away from 600 in his NHL career. An exciting time, a happy and safe 2025 to you all, and we'll be chatting as the Wings continue to try and figure this thing out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Hockey Town Hangout on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.